Hey everyone, this is Mark Phillip with Studica. Today I'm going to be talking about an EQ trick that I like to use whenever I'm working on audio or music or really anything in general related to sound. Equalization is essentially the ability to raise and lower specific frequencies within an audio track. This gives you an enormous amount of flexibility with the sound of whatever audio you're working with, and it's pretty much how you can sculpt the sound to whatever you want. One trick I like to do is what I like to call thin band equalization. I don't know if there's a real term for this or not, but basically the idea is that you get a really thin band of EQ and you boost it really high, and you find the frequency in your audio track that's really bugging your ear. It's really harsh on your ear, and you then subtract that EQ down so that you can get rid of some of that annoyance about the sound. You can also use this to boost sound. I'll go over both methods. Now, first thing to note is I'm going to basically just be using normal equalization in Cubase, which is this right here. Now, every DAW that I'm aware of has some form of equalizer built into it, whether it's Pro Tools or Cubase or Logic, GarageBand, whatever. So this should be able to apply across the board to almost anything. This track that I have here that I'm looking at is specifically, this is like a keyboard. It's a piano string VST. It's very basic. All I got right now is a reverb on it. You know, you can hear that difference if I take the reverb off. I'm gonna leave it on there because I really like reverb. But what I want to do is hear this in my mix here. I got my drums, I got a bass sound, and I've got just this weird sweeping strings, or sorry, not strings, but this weird sweeping synth happening. So if I want to take, say, my piano track and try and isolate a specific frequency that might be bugging me, if I want to like clean up this file a bit, I enable my third EQ band on the channel, and I put the band to a 12 so it's really thin. And what I do is I raise this up to 24 dBs. You can already hear that sound. This is at 2K, so what I'll do is start going down the spectrum. So that's a bit of a, to me that tone right there is a bit annoying. If I wanted to clean this up a bit, clean my mix up, what I can do now is take this 24 and just pull this way down, say like -24. Now you can hardly hear the keyboard because I've taken so much sound out, which I don't necessarily like. So you slowly bring it back up and you get some of that fullness back. So I'll leave it here about -12. Let me turn off the EQ. Let me turn this keyboard up a bit actually. So now I'll turn it on. So it kind of cleans up our keyboard a little bit, and so we took that tone basically, and we're going to drop it a bit out of our mix so it's not as annoying to us. Now I'll do like a fourth band here. I'll put this as a parametric. It's going to be a 12. I'll jump this up 24 dB, and I'll start going down the spectrum again. And I'm basically listening for something that's really annoying to my ear. Okay, that right there is horrendous for me, just that sound. Now, using VST instruments, it's not going to be as bad as if you're using like an amped guitar where you're going to get a lot of weird mid-tones that bug you, but I'm just trying to illustrate the general idea. You can apply this to almost any track. If you do live guitar amp mixing and things like that, this can really come in handy to help clean up a guitar track or to help make it sound easier on the ears. So let's listen to this again at 24 boosted at this 2100 frequency. I'm going to turn it off. So by default we don't really notice it much, but let's hear what this sounds like if we actually drop this frequency out a bit. So if we go down all the way, it's too much. It starts sounding muffled. So I kind of like a slight, typically I use the extreme ends like -24 and +24 to identify what it is that I want to get out or to raise, and then I sort of find a fine area in between that's not too drastic, and I find like -6, -8, sometimes -10 will often keep most of the timbre of the sound intact without necessarily, you know, hindering the rest of the sound. Now this is all subtractive equalization, so I'm taking things out. Let me hear this one more time. I'm going to mute these other things so we can just hear the keyboard. Let me bypass this EQ. So it's just a little bit cleaner, you know, when I turn on that EQ, it's a little bit cleaner, and the instrument by itself may sound weak, but everything about music mixing or sound mixing is about how it fits in the mix. So, you know, if it works for what you're going for, then that's perfectly fine. Another thing I like to use this trick for is to boost kick drums. So with this kick now, typically with like a kick drum in rock music and things like that, you want that punch or that high end kind of, you know, smack so that it cuts through your mix. So typically the best way I end up finding to do that is to do my usual. I go with a real thin band here, and I just raise this by 24 dB. Now typically you're looking anywhere between 2 to 5K for that high-end click of a kick that you hear in like metal rock music. So I'm going to start searching up my spectrum here. So realistically to me that kind of has the best combination of punch and click. It's a bit annoying, but that's because we're at 24 dB. So if we hear this at 0, I bring this up to, let's do about 10. It starts to come out more. But typically with a kick, this, you know, when you do this sort of thin band equalization, it starts to sound really not realistic. And so typically what I like to do is expand this out, my Q. So at like 6.5, we're hearing a lot more of the actual beater hitting the head of that drum. So now we hear 0 again. And if I bring this up, it starts to click a lot more, and it doesn't sound as awkward. Now, of course, the drum by itself might sound odd. You kind of have that weird chirping going on because we're boosting that 2.5 area, but once you throw this into a mix, it starts to cut through a lot more. And, you know, likewise, you could do this on the low end of the spectrum too. If you want more, say, punch, we'll start bringing this down. You know, you want some, you know, if you want some big boomy kick, you can go down to this kind of low frequency area. And as I bring that up to about 8, you can really hear that starting to cut through more now. Let's try expanding the Q out again. So right there we've got quite a bit of bumpiness. So I'll turn my kick down a bit so it's not hitting my mix so hard. So we hear that there. Let me bypass the EQ. So that's our kick normally. I'm going to turn down my high end a bit. In fact, I don't quite like that high end. I'm going to move this up a bit. It's all about fine-tuning. I guess that 2.5 area is about the best I'm gonna find. But maybe a thinner Q at about 8 instead of a 6. Maybe even a 10. So there we go. Now we've got more of that clarity on the top end, cutting the kick through. Let me bypass this again. So there we go. That's a bit more thuddy. That's a bit more cutting in the mix. And you know, lastly, let's look at some subtractive EQ. If we go to you know, typically you find muddy frequencies around the 400 to 500. Whoops. Let me do a parametric. So I don't really like that 327 area. Maybe I want to cut. Now all of a sudden we really cleaned up that kick. You hear that difference? Immediately. You could go farther and put that EQ out quite a bit more, but that starts to sound real thin, you see. So it's all about fine-tuning, finding that area that you really want your sound to come across as, and just, you know, manipulating it. So one last time, bypass the EQ. We got that weak little kick, and then we turn the EQ on. All of a sudden we got power, we have click, and we have cleanness. You have a lot of pocket here now in this muddy area for your instruments to actually come across more. That will push your tone. So that's pretty much the gist of it. You know, this is all pretty much introductory to this whole concept, but that's just a concept I tend to use a lot, is this thin band equalization. It's a good way to spot the areas in your tracks that are either annoying or need to be controlled. And instead of doing a really broad spectrum boost or subtraction with your EQ, you can do a very specific and narrow one. This is also a great idea if you have instruments that are pushing out tone and you know, actual notes. You can actually use the physics of sound to your advantage here and do a real thin band EQ and push, say, like the root frequency of an instrument so that it pops out more compared to the rest of the instrument. So you hear a lot more of that actual root note and that root tone out of your instrument. So there's a lot you can do with this. I hope this was informational, and thanks for watching, and stay tuned to Studica's blog for more tips and tricks such as this. Thank you.